Hello, and this is Seal, and as you are probably aware by now, the preliminary American Tech Tree has been released in War Thunder. That's slated to be released soon, probably by New Year. And we have the picture, and I mean, let's just work our way from the left through the vehicle types, and let's talk about them. So first, we have the Spags. To be fair, I don't really know much or care much about them. I mean, the only anti-aircraft gun I care about is the 257, which is a bane to my side, literally. So I mean, if we compare the top one, the M42 Duster, which has a 40mm cannon, I don't know, probably will have worse penetration than the 257 with its, for some reason, firing APCR shells out of an anti-aircraft cannon, which I don't see any practical need to do so. I don't know if it will be able to compete against the 257, so let's go to the light tanks. Go to the M2A4, that's probably going to be the reserve tank. Interestingly, and a bit sad, no M2A3 or M2A2s, which had 250 caliber turrets, which would have been pretty nice to just roll around in low tier battles. I mean, that's sucky penetration, but oh well. They have raped T26s and so forth. Then we have the M3s and M5s. I expect these to be fairly low tier. I mean, they have 37mm guns like the M2A4. I don't see them being any higher than a 3. They're probably similar to the T50. I mean, the M5 is probably very similar to the T50. M22 I'd guess is slightly higher than the M50, the T50. What probably most people are excited about is the M24 and the M41, Walker Bulldog. If we look at the M24, to be fair, I mean, seeing as the game really has no point in scouting, I don't know how the M24 will fare considering its gun is fairly weak. If it's tiered out, tier 4 for example, at rank at tier 4. Unless it's horribly under leveled in the BR, I don't really seeing it being much use if it's on the same BR as, say, between 5.0 and 6.0. It would have to be lower than that for it to be any use. M41 on the other hand, it has a fairly powerful 76mm gun. When firing HVAB should be able to do a lot of damage. So I would expect it to be fairly top tier, 7.0 and higher. Probably 6.7 and higher. It should be a fairly good tank. Let's move on to the medium tanks. M2, low tier tank. Should be fun, I guess. Then we have the M3s and the M3A1. One has a cast hull armor. One has the welded hull armor. Obviously, the tanks, these have a fairly large following, and I expect in this game they should have a large following as well. Then we go to the fairly famous M4s, Shermans. The M4 and the M4A1, both 75mm. One has welded armor, one has cast armor. They should be the same tank. Then the M4A2, not used by the US Army, but used by the US Marine Corps. Then we have the 76mm Shermans, the M4A1 and the M4A2. M4A2 is pretty interesting considering that it was never used by the US Army or the US Marine Corps. It was only used by the Red Army, the 76mm version. So it's similar, I guess, to the P-63. I mean, I don't think it should be there. I mean, the P-63 was never used by the U.S. Air Force in the same way that this tank was never used by the U.S. Armed Forces. Following on, we have the M4A3 with the 105mm. I want to see how this tank will really be, considering that, I don't know, the 105mm doesn't have the derp of the sheer power of the 152mm. I don't know how it will be. I mean, I see it as fairly low level, to be honest. Yeah, they'll have heat rounds, but they only have about 100 or so millimeters of penetration. So definitely not a high level tank, probably below the Tiger, I would say. Following on, we have the EZ8. Should be a good tank fault if you load up HVAP. Should be fairly mobile thanks to the upgraded suspension over the other Sherman variants, the HVSS suspension. And I think the M4A38 should be a very good tank in the game. Probably going to be Tiger or higher, I would say. Moving on, we have the M26, M46, and M47s. I mean, the M26 in the picture looks as though it has a 90mm T15 rather than the 90mm M3, just based on the length of the barrel. The M46 in the picture seems to have the M47 turret, when in reality the M46 was the same as an M26 for the most part, with just different engine and drive component, engine and transmissions. I don't know if those are just errors in the pictures, but if they're gonna be like that in the release, well, that's gonna be unideal. I mean, yeah. M47, not much to say about it. Interestingly, no M48, even though that is within the now broken time frame. I don't know why that is not in there. I mean, the M47 was deemed obsolete 5 years. It was seen as an interim tank. It was deemed obsolete by the US Army 5 years after it entered service. The M48 should be the true top tank in the US tree. Let's move on to the heavy and assault tanks. M6. Oh, well, I don't know what to make about it. It's probably similar to the Tiger, I'd say. Probably maybe a bit lower. And we have the assault tanks, the M4A3s, E2s, the jumbo Shermans. M4, the 75mm jumbo. It's gonna be pretty tricky to place because it's too low in the BR. It's gonna rape everything too high, and it's not gonna be able to punch or anything. So that'll be pretty interesting where they put it. The M4A3 E2 with the 76mm. It's probably going to be a vehicle that should be well above the above the Tiger in terms of BR. I don't know why I'm comparing it to the Tiger, but that's just my standard. I'm just spouting off wherever I'm going. Interestingly, next we have the T-32. In my opinion, if they were going to have a non-service, a vehicle that didn't enter service with the US Army, they should have gone with the T-29 because that was slated for production, but the war ended and production was terminated when 12 to 14 vehicles or something were built. T-32 wasn't the case. I mean, I think they should have gone with the T-29, but whatever. And finally, M103, the big one. Well, I mean, there's lots of, controversy with this vehicle. I mean, it has by far the most powerful gun in the game when it enters the game. I mean, I don't know, maybe they should have gone with the T43E1, which was the variant of the sort of M103 family. that was produced within the now broken time frame. But on the other hand, the difference between the M103 and the T43E1 is nothing that will affect the game, because they'll most likely not be represented in the game. So, I mean, you could go with the M103 and have it as, they probably just named it the M103 for, convenience sake rather than T43E1. There really isn't that much difference between the T43E1 and the M103 in terms of being in the game, in terms of functionality in the game. In real life there was, but War Thunder Ground Forces hasn't got that level of fidelity to model that. I mean, so no USTDs as can be seen, which is a bit sad. No M48 pattern, which is a bit sad as well. I don't see why that was not included. It probably should be included. It's well within the time frame. Overall, I'm a bit. Yeah, it's dealable. It's dealable as it's workable as a tech tree. There's just a few. I mean, one thing I'd like to add is more Sherman variants. I mean, for a country that produced so many Sherman variants, it doesn't really have the Sherman spam that we thought the Americans should get. Like the M481 with the late production hull and the M481 with the early production hull, stuff like that. As an example. But I guess as a starter, with missing the M48, and otherwise it is fine. I mean, the TDs are slated to be introduced in a later update. Can't do anything about that. But yeah, I think overall the tree is fine. So I hope you enjoyed me rambling on about, well, something that was pretty useless. And yeah, signing off.